packet to page 38, coverings of the brain. We're going to look at the coverings of the brain so that we can talk about the dural sinuses. And then we're going to look at, that allows us to talk about how blood flows into the brain and out of the brain, as well as how the cerebral spinal fluid circulates and gets back into the capillary system. So, remember I use my morning section as the guinea pigs? You guys get the more refined product. So when I was diagramming the layers of the meninges, I didn't match up the colors that are on the screen. So this time, I'll match the colors up on the screen. All right? So I'm going to do a real basic outline of the central nervous system and the overlay of the meninges, the dura mater, the arachnoid matter, and the pia mater, and then we'll look at more detail. So if you recall, yesterday, I drew the brain stem and spinal cord, like this. And in actuality, the brain kind of has two hemispheres. So the innermost layer of the meninges, and there are three again, is very thin and fine and contains blood vessels. And on this diagram, you're looking at the top of the brain, so you're seeing two hemispheres with a fold in between. All right? So to use the same colors, I'll use blue. And this innermost fine layer is known as the pia mater. So I'm going to draw that on here. And it covers the brain stem, and comes down the spinal cord. And we were scheduled to talk about the spinal cord today, but I'm going to put it off for a little bit. But along the spinal cord, the pia mater is pulled out to these lateral extensions. Kind of like if I were to take my shirt and pull it out to the side and attach it to a structure out here to keep me stable from swinging from side to side too badly. And so where these are pulled out, the pia mater is identified as a denticulate ligament. And again, that's only along the spinal cord. And then when it reaches the tip of the spinal cord, right, it continues on down to attach at the coccyx. So again, if my forearm is the spinal cord and my sleeve is the pia mater, this would continue on down like this, pass into the spinal cord and attach to the coccyx. Okay, again, to anchor the end of the spinal cord. So this would be the level of the coccyx. And this structure is identified as the phylum terminale. Again, made out of pia mater. So the denticulate ligament is made of pia mater, and the phylum terminale is made of pia mater. Then we have a gap, and within this gap is where we find the cerebral spinal fluid. Okay, so the next layer is known as the arachnoid matter. And the reason it's called that is because of these little spidery filaments kind of are found within that space. It looks like spider legs. And so within this membrane would be the arachnoid matter. And the space between the pia mater and the arachnoid matter is subarachnoid space, and it contains cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF. And it stops at the level of the second sacral vertebra. So we put that as S2. And then the dura mater here is kind of a this or tan color. I'm just going to make it black. Well, I guess I have brown. I'll do that with brown. So now the dura mater is very tough. I had some dura mater. Is there a shallow tray out here? Here we go. So this is actual dura mater that's been embedded with plastic. So what you're actually touching is plastic. But during lab, I'll bring in a real human brain that also has the dura mater on it. And it's almost as tough as this, even without the plastic. And this completely surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. Dura meaning tough, and mater is mother. So the arachnoid matter is fused to the deep surface of the dura mater. There's a potential space there, known as the subdural space. But the subarachnoid space is where the CSF fluid actually is. Okay, so both of those stop at the second cervical vertebra's body. So if I were to diagram the ventricular structures that we covered yesterday within this, rather simplistically, we would have here in the cerebral hemispheres the lateral ventricles and the third ventricle passing through the midbrain would have the cerebral aqueduct, and then the triangular shaped fourth ventricle. All right. So lateral ventricle. Remember, those are 1 and 2. Third ventricle. Cerebral aqueduct in the midbrain, and fourth ventricle in the medulla and the pons. Then, CSF fluid can either go out the lateral apertures or the median aperture and get into the subarachnoid space, or it can travel down the central canal of the spinal cord to the very bottom and enter into the subarachnoid space here, and then cycle around, all right, and then get back into the blood. So that's what we're going to get to as we look at the blood supply and the venous supply. So this would be central canal. Okay? So as we look at these meninges, this is kind of just an overall view of what they are. We'll come back and look at this diagram. It's on the screen right now. I'll draw that in a little bit more detail. But let me just turn off the... So here we have the scalp. all right, the skull, periosteum over the skull, and then the dura mater. You'll notice that the dura mater is split right here, all right, and bulging into the split in the dura mater is the fold of arachnoid matter. This split in the dura mater is identified as a sinus. We're on page 44, 45, 46. I kind of went out of order.
Sorry to interrupt class.
38. 38? Was that a 44? Okay. All right, so now looking at the dura mater, so if we look at this structure here, these are called folds of the dura mater. All right, so yeah, thank you. Bottom of page 48. So if we look at the dura mater here, where it comes down between the two halves of the brain. So if we look at the brain, the two hemispheres are not joined together until about halfway down. So we have these two surfaces, and the dura mater goes into that as a fold. And so you can see it right here. All right, our fancy word, anatomical word for fold is false. It sounds like we're saying false, like not real or pretend, but it means fold, okay? And so that comes in between the two cerebral hemispheres, and then a tent-like structure here separates the occipital lobe from the cerebellum. So I'm going to draw that over here on the side, kind of like the diagram that you have up in the upper left-hand corner, because these contain the sinuses that we're going to use to follow the drainage of blood away from the brain. Okay? Actually, you can still almost see what I drew from this morning. Notice we're continuing that pattern of a C shape. Dura mater is brown. I forgot to change my colors here. So this would be found between the two halves of the brain. So this structure right here. And it's known as the false cerebri.
Where is it on this?
Let me turn the light off. So this would be the top of the cerebrum, the top of the dura mater, and the falx cerebri is this arching sickle-shaped structure right here. Okay. So another view. Here it is on a real skull. And again, it's an arch-shaped structure here. And so that arch is right here. So this piece right here is this piece right here. Okay, where it comes down between the two hemispheres. And here's a better view. So this is the falx cerebri. You'd have half the brain on one side and half the brain on the other. So if I were to take this structure here, it would fit like a skull cap, if you will, over the brain, and you would see the falx cerebri along the medial surface of the brain. Okay. I had a model one that they took back in the other class, so hold on one second and I'll see if they're done with it.